Hello and welcome to Evo India. Now, I am not a very religious person, but for some reason my prayers have been answered. Say hello to the Aprilia Tuono 457, the naked sibling of the very wonderful RS 457. And in this first ride review, I'm going to be telling you what is different on this bike as against its fair sibling and whether or not you should consider getting one. But before we proceed, don't forget to like this video, share it with like-minded enthusiasts and smash that bell icon to stay notified for all of our video drops. First things first, let's address the design of this motorcycle. Now, as you can see, this doesn't look very Tuono-like, and that's because Aprilia has implemented a new strategy for this Tuono 457 with this all-new headlight setup. Now, as you can see, it has a very distinct Aprilia-looking front headlight with these two DRLs that flank it, a shape that is very similar to the other Aprilia motorcycles, but unlike the bigger Tuono 660 and the V4, this doesn't have the fairing that attaches to the bike with this nice short semi-fairing. They have instead gone for this design. Now, I wasn't very convinced with this design when I first saw it at the EICMA Motor Show, but seeing it in the flesh, it does look a lot better than the photos do suggest. I would have obviously liked that it have the iconic Tuono face, but the more time I'm spending with this bike, I am liking how it looks. Now, apart from that, as you start moving behind, as you can see, the engine is fully exposed, barring these two radiator shrouds that you have on either side that do mention the name of the motorcycle, that is Tuono 457, and you have a tank that has been reprofiled. It has a slightly different shape. The capacity also has changed. It has dropped from 13 liters to 12.7 liters, but that's a marginal difference, but the shape of the tank is slightly different. Now, the most obvious change is the handlebar. Now, you have a single piece taller, wider handlebar, which makes your riding position pretty upright, but I'll get to that in a minute. And the rear section of the motorcycle is pretty much unchanged, including the position of the foot pegs is the same. Now, this Tuono 457 will be available in two colors. One is a black and red color scheme that will be on your screen right now, and one is this, and I really do like how this white and red color scheme looks. The accenting is brilliant. What do you think about the design of the Tuono 457? Can you digest this front end? Let us know in the comment section down below. Now that I have walked you through the design changes of the motorcycle, let's talk about the functional changes, and this is where things get really interesting. Now, as you can see from the side profile, barring this section, the bike looks pretty much unchanged, and that is because it is. So when you get on it, you're greeted by the same comfortable, friendly 800mm seat height, and you have the foot pegs that are pretty much in the identical position as to that on the RS. Now, on the upper body, you're reaching out to a taller, wider single-piece handlebar, not a clip-on that is putting you in a super sport racy position. This is a proper naked bike ergonomic setup and a very sporty one at that. As you can see, the foot pegs are fairly rear set and tall, which means there's a considerable bend in my leg. Now, this might be cause for concern when it comes to comfort, but I'll get to that in a bit. Now, taller riders might face a bit of a problem because the way the tank has been reprofiled, this section sort of gets in the way into getting a comfortable hook on the tank. I would rather have this recess a little higher, but shorter riders will have no problem whatsoever. This again isn't a deal breaker. This is just a mere matter of comfort and preference. Now, as far as the handlebar is concerned, I really love how wide it is. It's not too wide, it's not too narrow. It gives you just the right amount of leverage over the motorcycle, and the engineers tell us that the rake and trail figures are identical, which also means that the wheelbase is identical. But because of the extra leverage that you get from the bars, the bike feels that much more agile, especially when you're maneuvering through traffic and when you hit the twisties. Now, speaking of the handling of the motorcycle, there's not much I can say that you haven't already heard from the RS 457, because the handling of this bike is also phenomenal. This dual beam aluminum frame and the suspension setup, everything works really well. The tires are very grippy for the roads, and all in all, the handling package is sublime. And with the added leverage that this handlebar offers, the whole experience is that much nicer because you're a lot more comfortable as you're attacking the twisties. Quick direction changes, stability mid corner and through the entire corner is very good. It's very impressive, the handling package of this motorcycle, but then again, that's no surprise, right? This is after all an Aprilia and it wears the badge proudly. Now, coming to the braking setup, you have the identical setup to the RS457, which is a 320mm disc at the front with a 4-piston bi-brake caliper and a 220mm disc at the rear with a single piston bi-brake caliper. As soon as you start riding hard and you're braking hard from higher speeds, the lever faded quite a bit, the feel of the lever reduced quite a bit, and you had to really pull the lever all the way in to get any sort of braking performance. Now, in your regular city commutes, this will be a non-issue, but for any sort of sporty riding that is going to be happening over a period of time where there are going to be a lot of heat cycles, this is something that definitely needs to be rectified. We have addressed the same to Aprilia. We are hoping that they will give some sort of clarity on this very soon. Now, like I said before, the riding position is great, the handling is great. I want to talk about the ride quality as well, because after all, the suspension setup is also identical to the RS457 with the same amount of travel. So that's a 41mm upside down fork at the front with 120mm of travel, and a monoshock at the rear with 130mm of travel and preload adjustability at both ends. But now, because of the way you're sitting, you're more upright, you're putting more weight on the monoshock, and you're in a position where you're more poised to handle the bumps, the ride quality feels that much better than on the RS457, because on the RS457 you're in a pretty committed stance. So if you do hit that bump or that pothole, you're not really in much of a position in your body to brace yourself for the impact. Here you're in a much more commanding stance and you can deal with bumps a lot better. So this feels a lot more sure-footed on that front as well. The tires are also the same TVS Eurogrip Pro Torque tires. Great grip on the road, good enough grip on the track as well. So you're getting a very good component package right from the factory, but those brakes, they need to be sorted out. Now, in terms of weight, Aprilia tells us that despite losing the fairing, the bike more or less weighs the same as the RS457, and a quick look at the spec sheet on the brochure reveals just that. Both bikes weigh 175 kilos wet, and the cause for this is still not been confirmed, but we are assuming that it could be the weight of the single piece handlebar. Now, let's come to the engine of this motorcycle. Again, a very familiar scene here as well, because this is the same 457cc liquid-cooled parallel twin motor with a 270-degree crank. In terms of power figures, you have the same 47 bhp at 9400 rpm and 43.5 Nm of torque at 6700 rpm. But before I go ahead, let's give you a quick reminder of what this bike sounds like. This is honestly by far one of the best sounding bikes under 600cc, and there is really no competition on that front. Now, coming to the engine and the ride and performance of this motorcycle, it is very, very similar to the RS457, but what Aprilia have done to make this more of a naked bike than the RS457 could be is to increase a tooth in the rear sprocket. So basically the rear sprocket is one tooth larger now, and what that translates to is even more low and mid-range performance. Now, the RS457, like I already said, was a lot more tractable than it should have been for the sort of bike it is, which made it very usable in all kind of riding conditions. Yes, the top end was a little not at par with other parallel twin competitors, but that more than made up for it with the low and mid-range performance. And now with the extra tooth on the rear sprocket of the Tuono 457, that tractability has just gone up a notch. This feels a lot more aggressive down low in the low end and the mid-range. You have a lot more grunt now, and this just means it's easier to ride because you need to worry that much less about your upshifts and downshifts. Now, the way this makes torque, now in first, second gear, you can actually do some power wheelies on demand without having to pop the clutch, and that's just a whole lot of fun. And you know you can do that confidently because you also have the safety net of traction control with multi-level to take care of you if you so wish to. Now, in terms of features, apart from the electronic suite that I already mentioned, you continue to get the same 5-inch TFT screen, and you also get all the connectivity features that come with it along with the companion app. And LED lighting, of course, is standard as well, with that new LED headlight and the new DRL signatures that make up the front end of the Tuono. Now let's talk about the price. This has been launched at an ex-showroom price of rupees 3.95 lakh. Now, this is an ex-showroom Maharashtra price, which makes it roughly 25,000 rupees more affordable than the RS457, which recently got a price hike from 4.10 to 4.20. Now, for the fact that this gets pretty much everything that the RS RS457 gets, barring a fairing and the clip-on handlebars, that is great value for money because you're saving a lot as against the RS457. And the benefit of this motorcycle is that it's going to be a lot more usable in your everyday riding conditions than an RS457 would be, because an RS457 is a brilliant track machine. It's great for the twisties. It is something you can get used to living with on a daily basis, but when you have this in the picture, I feel like it's a no-brainer that if city commuting, urban riding and touring is what you're going to be looking at, this is what you should go for. Now, when you talk about competition, the closest rival is the MT-03, which has gotten a significant price cut, and you also have the KTM 390 Duke, which has also been price cut by roughly 18,000 rupees. Does that mean that the Tuono 457 seems like too expensive a proposition? I really don't think so, because the joy of riding that this motorcycle delivers is really on another level. I don't really think it's very fair to compare it with the Duke 390 because that gets a single cylinder motor. It's manic, it's similar in terms of performance, but this is just in a whole different league of refinement, and the riding experience is just very great. That doesn't mean that we will not be doing a comparison, so stay tuned for that. But on this initial first ride experience, I really like what Aprilia have done with the Tuono 457. I like that they haven't strayed away from the formula of the RS457 too much. There are a few issues that need to be resolved, primarily the braking, but once that is solved, this is a very, very good bike for the 90% of the people that are planning to get a sporty motorcycle under 600cc. And that is what I think about the Aprilia Tuono 457. What do you think about it? Let us know in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you for watching.